Hello and welcome to the online edition of GSC's What's New in SOLIDWORKS 2019. I'm Jeff Setzer, our Technology Evangelist here at GSC, and I have a ton of new stuff to show you about what's new in SOLIDWORKS 2019. But before we do that, I want to take your mind outside in a clear, dark night sky. Most of us have been out under a dark night sky, seeing the starry heavens above. Some of us maybe can pick out a couple of constellations, and a few of us have maybe even taken a closer look through telescopes. Many of us in science, engineering, technology, and math careers have gotten our start by being inspired, visiting a planetarium or an observatory and hearing stories of faraway places in the universe. Places like Gliese 667. This is a triple star system in the constellation of Scorpius. And what makes it particularly interesting to humans is that Gliese 667's third star, the smallest red dwarf star, has not one but multiple planets in the habitable zone of that star, which means that those worlds can harbor liquid water, a building block for what we know as life. There are a number of other interesting aspects of this star system and its exoplanets. But one fact in particular, I think, is of interest to this audience. For when you look at Gliese 667, you're looking at an object, a system, that's 23 light years away. So when you look at it through telescopes or binoculars, the light you're seeing left that object 23 years ago, or about the time that SOLIDWORKS was first brought into our universe. People ask me all the time, Jeff, how do we know that something is 23 light years away, or that this is a red dwarf star and it has this chemical makeup and this and that and the other thing? And I always have some sort of scientific explanation, but then it always comes down to really what I think is one of the most profound inventions in human history, something we call the telescope.
Centuries ago, Galileo turned a simple telescope to the heavens, launching us all on a quest of cosmic discovery.
Galileo, in his work with the telescope, was threatening the philosophy that underpinned the church's understanding of God.
400 years later, our journey is just beginning.
Edwin Hubble completely revolutionized our picture of the universe we live in, from a small static universe to a dynamic and expanding universe.
The sun supplies the energy that sustains all life on the Earth, and so it is extremely important for us to understand all aspects of the variability of the sun.
There is a significant potential that the Earth will be hit by a killer asteroid. With PenSTARRS, we will be able to detect such killer asteroids 30 years before their impact.
And liftoff of the Space Shuttle Discovery with the Hubble Space Telescope, our window on the universe.
Every time they went up and did a servicing mission, they put new instruments on the telescope. And each servicing mission gave us a whole new observatory. And that's why Hubble has remained so scientifically productive, and that's why it's remained so popular.
What I saw was really shocking. My computer program was telling me that the universe was acting like it had a negative mass. And the only way that could happen is if the expansion rate wasn't slowing down, it was actually speeding up. And that's when I had the first clue that something really interesting was going on.
There are different ways in which you can explain this observed acceleration. You can add dark energy, which is a pretty exciting possibility, because we have no idea what dark energy is.
In my opinion, we are on the verge of a revolution where we will have to rearrange all the information and provide a new vision of the universe.
Technology and the thirst for knowledge has taken humanity on a quest of discovery, removing us from a small, confined ball of stars and dropping us into an endless ocean of space and time.
There are few places on Earth better suited for professional telescopes than 14,000 feet on top of a dormant volcanic mountaintop known as Mauna Kea on the big island of Hawaii. And there, among the great observatories from the great institutions of the Earth, you will find the Canada-France-Hawaii Telescope. Now, this telescope has been around for 40 years with a long history of firsts in the fields of astronomy and optics. And in fact, the CFHT has given us great insight into things like stellar nurseries, stellar graveyards, and even galaxies completely outside of our own. But as prolific as the CFHT has been, it is, in fact, a technological piece of equipment, and therefore 40 years is a pretty long time to be around. CFHT Corporation knows that they need to replace it with something larger and more modern, but the catch is they're not allowed to build any more observatories on top of the sacred mountain of Mauna Kea. So what's the solution? The solution is to build a brand new telescope replacing the 3.6 meter original telescope with an 11 meter diameter mirror behemoth telescope, but putting it in the same building as they built 40 years ago. That is an engineering feat of astronomical challenge. And in fact, this is where our story begins with SOLIDWORKS, and specifically, in this case, SOLIDWORKS 2019. We're going to talk about how SOLIDWORKS 2019 brings unprecedented performance, allows better and easier attention to detail across all engineering disciplines, how we've enhanced everybody and all stakeholders in the engineering enterprise across the design ecosystem and their capabilities to get the job done and communicate with each other, as well as showing how SOLIDWORKS 2019 allows our community to take advantage of the latest innovations in computing technology. And I can think of no better place to begin than with performance. When it comes to performance, most people first describe their experience with moving their model around on screen, that visual interface that you have to exploring your design. In SOLIDWORKS 2018 and previous, we had different modes to help us increase performance with our large models. For example, large assembly mode was available. This is something where we could actually remove some of the visual detail as we moved our model on screen and navigated through our design, but yet we had better performance. If we wanted to get higher visual accuracy, we could do that, but then we're sacrificing some of that speed on the manipulation side. We start getting things chunkier, drop frames, etc. Well, SOLIDWORKS 2019 completely changes the game. Now I don't have to go into any special large assembly mode to be able to get fast performance as I move, pan, zoom, and rotate my model, yet I have full visual appeal all the way through my experience. So putting them side by side, SOLIDWORKS 2018, you can see that SOLIDWORKS 18 is a lot slower than 2019, or I should really say that SOLIDWORKS 2019 is much faster than 18. Same data set, same hardware, same view manipulation commands. Not only are things moving faster and more fluidly, but we lose a lot of that hesitation that we had when going to different commands before. So if I want to zoom out to my entire model design, it happens right away. I'm not waiting several moments for it to kick in like it would in the past. So what SOLIDWORKS 2019's new graphics engine does for us is it gives us that high performance view manipulation and without having to go into different modes. And because this new graphics engine scales with your hardware and takes advantage of newer graphics hardware, the sky's the limit. As technology marches forward and we have better and faster graphics engines that are disposable. SOLIDWORKS CAD will take advantage of those step by step. Another aspect of large design performance that people typically ask me about is, they're thinking about how long does it take to open up my assembly in SOLIDWORKS. Well, we've had a mode for that for a long time called Large Design Review. And Large Design Review, or LDR, is lightning fast when opening up large assemblies because all we're doing is opening up the graphics. We're not opening up the BREP or the parametrics or anything, just the graphics. And what we've been able to do in LDR mode has been pretty useful in that design review sort of role. I can manipulate my model visually. I can measure off of the visual graphics there. I can section my model different ways in 3D space. I can hide components if I want to get them out of the way temporarily. Okay, all those things are able to be done, but we could not edit our assembly until now. Now in SOLIDWORKS 2019, I can actually edit my assembly while in LDR mode. I have full access to all my planes and axes and reference geometry. I can see all the items in a tree, and I can also see their mates, most importantly. So if I want to start changing my design, I can edit it right here. Say there's a couple components that no longer belong in my design, I can just highlight them and delete them like I normally would. But again, I'm in LDR mode, which is graphics only, lightning fast performance. Likewise, I can insert new components, put in my assembly, and then I can mate them up the way I normally would whenever I add any components to my assembly, using the typical types of mates I would do, and the same kind of methodologies I would use too, the same mouse movements. I can take advantage of heads-up user interactions and that kind of thing. If I have a component that's got magnetic mates, well, I can take advantage of those in LDR mode as well. So doing all the types of things we would do for large design manipulation and changing things, making our design and changing it and molding it on the fly, we can do all that, but within that super fast graphics only LDR mode. If I have a bunch of components I've hidden, I can use the Hide Show Components tool to pull them back as I normally would in regular other assembly modes. And I can also change configurations of components in my assembly. And when I'm done with all this, I simply save it to disk and it's saved. So whether next time someone opens this up in LDR mode or a large assembly mode or fully resolved, doesn't matter. I've actually made actual changes to my design in LDR mode, saved those changes to disk just as I normally would any other way, but I'm taking advantage of all that speed by only working interactively with the graphics. And this ability to edit assemblies in LDR mode, coupled with the new graphics pipeline that's also available in SOLIDWORKS 2019, is a huge leap forward for people dealing with really large assemblies in SOLIDWORKS. Now, for people who aren't doing large assemblies, but everyday assembly type stuff, there's some great stuff in there for you as well. So in 2019, we can actually make better sense of all those mates that we have by classifying them and putting them in separate folders based on their status. So what do I mean by that? Well, I have mates that are resolved. I have mates that are in error, over defining. I can just go ahead and throw them in their own folder. So now I can see that I have 100 resolved mates. They're fine. I have 2 mates that are in error. If I look at that error situation, I can see that I have a missing reference. So go ahead and apply that reference right inside that mate. And of course, SOLIDWORKS will automatically pick up that that cannot be applied to the other error mate with the error in it, so I'll fix them both. I have mates that are over-defining, so I'll take a couple of those over-defining mates and suppress them, which will put them in their own suppress folder. And then I also have a mate that's suppressed because it's it's connected to a missing component, so that component's deleted. Let's go ahead and get rid of the mate. And finally, any inactive mates that I have will also be categorized in their own folder, so it's easy to see what's going on with all my mates in my assembly. Now, a good practice when working with assemblies is to have all your concentric mates lock rotation. This happens a lot with fasteners and things. And in 2019, I can now just say, hey, all the mates that are concentric mates in my folder, I want to go ahead and lock them all right out the bat. So that works great when I have a bunch of mates I have to deal with after the fact. But we can also, in Toolbox, change the settings so that now whenever I add a new Toolbox component in my assembly, those concentric mates will have their rotation locked right off the bat. So some nice enhancements to everyday mating in SOLIDWORKS 2019. With exploded views, we've had a lot of fun with exploded views over the years, and SOLIDWORKS 2019 even enhance the interface to make it easier to use. For example, I now have the rollback bar or a rollback bar available in exploded view setups, just like I have in the feature manager tree for my features and my sketches of my model. So I can roll forward and back and see how all my mates are, or all my steps are set up. And I can also reorder them just by dragging and dropping. So I want that cover to come off after the screws come off and not before. If I pull that rollback bar to a certain point in time in my sequence, I might decide I want to add another explode step. In this case, we'll explode those washers inside there. Just go ahead and do that explode step, and it's going to insert it not at the end of my explode sequence, but right in time where I have that rollback bar inserted. So that way I'm inserting things right in the correct sequence right away, not doing things at the end and having to reorder them manually. Now, in addition to this, we can now suppress explode steps instead of just deleting them. Before, we could only delete them, which means we couldn't get them back. Now I can suppress them temporarily for whatever kind of purpose I have, and then I can unsuppress them at will at any time. Now, order is important with explode steps if you're going to do an animation, which I'm going to do here. And in SOLIDWORKS 2019, animations can now be saved in more file formats, including the pretty much universal MP4 file format. So therefore, if I tell SOLIDWORKS I want to record my animation sequence in a video file, and it's going to be an MP4 file, when SOLIDWORKS brings it up in Windows Preview here, I can not only see it here and verify that it's correct, but I also can know that I can email this or post it anywhere. Basically, and anybody with any device, mobile or desktop on any platform, is going to be able to view that animation, that movie file, without me having or them having to worry about transcoding it from one format to another. So those are nice enhancements.